Good morning, everybody, and welcome to She Sweet in Color. I'm Andrea Green, Operations Manager with ThinkLA and a member of our Diversity, Inclusion, and Gender Committee. It's such a privilege to have all of you with us today. So I have a few announcements before we begin our discussion. Check out our website at thinkla.org to register for upcoming webinars, events, and great membership information. Our ThinkLA podcast is now up and running. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Pocket Casts. Be sure to sign up for our weekly newsletter, which has lots of great articles and resources. Today, we're going to be discussing glass ceilings, seats at the table, and traction in the C-suite. We put together an amazing panel of African-American women in leadership positions. This opportunity to hear from these top executives will hopefully give you perspective on the unique women of color experience and understanding on how to create space in professional cultures which are lacking in diversity and engagement. Before we get started with today's talk, here are a few upcoming events. This Thursday, September 24th, it's going to be a ThinkLA doubleheader. In the morning at 10 a.m., we're going to host the next evolution of entertainment presented by Warner Media. Brands today are leveraging technology, creativity, and connectivity to change the way media is created and distributed. We're going to hear from experts in the entertainment, media, platform, and advertising technology space about how they reach cross-screen consumers through the convergence of content, creativity, and new technology innovation. Later that night at 7 o'clock, it's going to be time for a little virtual fun. We'll be hosting a Best of the 90s film and music trivia night. If these answers sound familiar to you, Cheers, The Real World, Furby, Tetris, and Smells Like Teen Spirit, then this night is for you. Put on your best 90s outfit with a fly virtual background and join us for some fun. On October 1st at 4 o'clock, a really special event, ThinkLA is going to host a town hall style discussion, as well as a virtual screening of the film Suppressed 2020, The Fight to Vote, a short 38-minute powerful documentary capturing the corruption and purging of votes and suppression in the 2018 Georgia election between Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp for governor. It's such an important film about the growing threat of voter suppression to our 2020 presidential election. Learn how millions of votes are at stake and why it's so important to vote. Please sign up today and tell others to do so too. On October 8th at 9 a.m., we'll have our annual entertainment breakfast. This year's theme is Rewriting the Script, the Future of Entertainment. We'll discuss where our leaders in the space see the entertainment industry emerging from challenges across health, politics, race relations, and the economy. Our breakfast will focus on diversity and inclusion, film, streaming, and platforms for TV and audio. We'll have some very candid discussions with leadership presentations from companies like Sony, BET, the CW, RPA, and just recently added, Charlemagne the God. Entertainment, more so than any other industry, has the opportunity to lead society back together for this generation. We need your thought leadership to help showcase it now more than ever. So reserve space for you and your teams today. On October 12th, we're going to have presentation skills. Hone your virtual presentation skills and engage the audience during a 3-day workshop for only an hour a day. We'll focus on body, face, language, fear, and nerves, how to present to people, or even in this time, to an empty room. There'll be a lecture as well as exercises for you to take part in. It's going to be fun and informative and engaging. Bring yourself and your team and come ready to participate. On October 21st, it's time for Auto Summit 2020. With media consumption at an all-time high as consumers continue to work from home, join us how to learn how the automotive manufacturers and dealers are redefining their creative messaging, marketing mix, and attribution models to drive their business forward. We'll discuss how the industry is adapting to this new world, what manufacturers are doing to adapt their businesses, and the move dealers have made to react to the new form of consumer demand, including contact-free sales and digital retailing. Find out what industry leaders are planning for. Yet another opportunity to help your team be a leader. Sign up today. We have some really powerful stuff coming up, a whole bunch of good stuff. So register today, right after we're done. So as you listen today to our thoughtful and insightful speakers, please submit your questions at any time during the session via the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We'll address as many as we can at the end of the session. Now it's time for another great ThinkLA discussion. And introducing you to our panel today and joining us as moderators are Kim Lewis, BET Senior Vice President of Sales, West Coast and Midwest, and Kirsten Atkinson, NBC Universal, VP of Client Partnerships Group. Now let's get started. Welcome, Kim and Kirsten.
Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Of course.
So awesome to be here and to be moderating with the wonderful Kim Lewis. Just a little bit about me before we get started here. I have been blessed to be able to work with most of the people on this panel and super excited to have this conversation today. I have been in the industry for almost 20 years, sitting here on the West Coast in Los Angeles. Before coming to NBC Universal, I was on the agency side. So partnering with these beautiful women on this panel has been more than a pleasure. And I think that the conversation was not only inspired by our own experiences and some of the challenges that we all face day to day as Black women, but also by the report, State of Black Women in Corporate America. And if you haven't seen or heard of the study, I definitely encourage you to look for it. It draws heavily on Lean In and McKinsey and Company's annual Women in the Workplace study, where the report offers a detailed look at the barriers holding Black women back at work. In the introduction, it basically states the workplace is worse for Black women. And that is such a powerful statement. And we're gonna dig a little bit into the insights of, why that exists, how we've been able to fight through it, and some of the superpowers that these women have to be able to create and pave the way for many others that are coming behind them. So just a couple of quick highlights in the study. It states that Black women are much less likely to be promoted to manager, and their representation dwindles from there. It also states that Black women far too often are the only one in the room and have this experience far too often. Black women are less likely to interact with senior leaders and receive less support from their managers. And then lastly, Black women face more day-to-day discrimination at work, particularly a wide range of microaggressions. So while we won't just delve into that, we will talk about the breadth of experience that these women have. I'm super excited to be here with them, and I'll toss it over to Kim to get the conversation started.
Yes, well, thank you, Kirsten, and thank you to all the panelists. I am so honored to be a part of this very important discussion with such amazing and successful women who we do know very dearly. I sit on the ThinkLA board with Kirsten, and as a Black female executive who's been in the advertising industry for over 20 years, I welcomed the opportunity to participate in our She Suite event. I am so excited that ThinkLA is recognizing the importance of giving us this platform and for our panelists to really share their incredible journey to the C-suite. So with that, let's get started. And we'd like to begin with just getting to know each of you a little bit. We'll start with Esther. Tell us about yourself, your background. Also share any new quarantine hacks, hobbies that you have taken on for the last 6 months.
Hello, very exciting to be in this conversation. I started and have been in the industry like many of my colleagues I'm sharing the panel with for quite some time. Probably, in some cases I've been in the industry longer than, people on my teams are, in age. So that will give you an indication, but I love it. I actually started as a marketing researcher. So I've always had an interest in people and understanding what makes them tick, what they're inspired by, and their relationship with brands. So from there, I saw Burrell Advertising being featured on a television show. It was their 10th anniversary. I had no knowledge that there was a Black agency. I thought that was the best thing in the world. It was back in the day, so I picked up the phone and asked to speak to the research manager, was connected with him and just said, hey, I want a job. And his response was, who are you? Calling up, just saying you want a job on the phone. Come in here so I can see who you are. And the rest is history. I have been in the industry ever since. So I started my industry career at an advertising agency. And at 10 years in, I moved over to the media side. So I've had really a full purview of what's going on in the industry from a variety of lenses. When I think about some of the tasks, some of the things that I've done to stay relevant in my career, on the media side, we all know things are changing so quickly. The technology does not sit still. So staying abreast of any kind of courses that are offered in my organization, just to be aware, having those conversations in networking environments with people who are in tangential but related disciplines, just to know what the buzzwords are, to understand, be able to understand the acronyms, all of that kind of stuff matters. When it comes to what I've been doing in the past 6 months since the pandemic, previous to that, I was an avid water aerobics aficionado.
Oh.
And don't think, little mamsy-pamsy. We were very aggressive. We had
What?
hip hop going on and all kind of 80s rock and that kind of
Love
stuff.
it.
So I loved it. And I always said you can't replace it. But what I have been doing, because I can't do that right now, is taming it down a little bit. I've been making masks for my friends and family with my signature touch. I've been writing letters and just sending them to people that I know, because I know what a joy it is to receive something handwritten in the mail instead of all the bills and junk. And so I've been very gratified by people's response to that. And then the latest thing that I am delving into is West African dance. I'm trying to get that down. I think that could be a replacement for my water aerobics. So that's what I've been doing.
Wow, sounds amazing. I kind of want to join you in that dancing. Pauline, tell us about yourself. Let us know your background and what are some of your hacks that you've done for the last.
Sure. Well, good morning, everybody. ThinkLA, thank you so much. Kim, Kirsten, thank you for having me. And I really look forward to having the conversation with you all and my fellow panelists, Esther and Sheila. That is one of my girls. But I am the head of West Coast sales at Quibi, and it's a mobile-first streaming platform, entertainment platform. And I have been in the digital space for over 20 years, which is unusual because typically people in digital media usually come from a print background or more traditional television background. And how I started back in '99, I'm dating myself. I graduated with a marketing degree and interned at Sony Music, also Barney's, New York. I couldn't figure out if I wanted a career path in fashion or music, but I just kept reading, a voracious reader, and kept reading about the digital internet media space and kind of like this first .com wave. And I saw it as an opportunity to blaze a new trail. And I've done that consistently throughout my career, where I pride myself in building businesses from the ground up, which has led me to Quibi. We launched 5 months ago, and I joined them from the Walt Disney Company, which I was there for 7 years. And how I came to the Walt Disney Company, I was at Maker Studios, which had a very successful exit. So throughout my career, I had joined startups either as like a founding member of the sales team or a founding sales leader to build a new business and really kind of like pioneer a whole new sort of industry, if you will, which is what we're doing right now with mobile first entertainment. And it really keeps you relevant because you're on the cutting edge. And also often you're in the room and I'm usually the only one in the room that looks like me. So I look forward to talking about, some advice and tips that have really served me well, and building kind of like mentorship with people who don't necessarily look like you. I haven't had the luxury of working in the multicultural space. It has been more general market, or has been all general market. So, I've kind of built what I call like a board of advisors of people who can advocate for you in the room and outside of the room that don't necessarily look like you. So I certainly look forward to talking more about that. And over the past 6 months, I am a mother of 2. As you could see behind me, I have a career as well as juggling family. Meditation has been really important to me over these past 6 months. So really being intentional about having that space and time to meditate, do yoga, has really just allowed me to have a fresh perspective every day. The days sort of like all meld together. There is no weekend. anymore. It's all kind of like the same. So really that sort of like meditation has helped center and guide me. So that's my quarantine hack.
Sounds amazing. Now, Sheila, tell us about yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Really excited to be here with my ThinkLA family. We shared we shared a hallway with our offices on the same corridor for many years, so I know that team really well. So really excited to be here this morning. And thank you, Kim, and thank you, Kirsten, for the vision to help put together this amazing program. And of course, my co-panelists, really excited to see you both, Esther and Pauline. So a little bit about me. I have been also in the digital media space for about 20 years, which is a little frightening to say. I started my career as an investment banker in technology, media, and telecom at Morgan Stanley. So really looking at the business models that were emerging as we were looking at the intersection of media and technology and where the opportunities were. So that was a lot of fun doing deals during the first dot-com boom. And then I went on to continue my career at Time Warner, which is now Warner Media and Meredith in different parts as the industries continue to evolve and consolidate. And I spent time there focused on launching new businesses. So really building businesses from the ground up, both on the multicultural side and also helping take some of the leading brands in the portfolio into the digital space. So my career has really been focused on digital as well as multicultural. And I launched a company, Mirror Digital, over 8 years ago now that really brought those two together. So we're a digital media company focused on helping brands reach multicultural consumers, but we are digital and we're technology enabled, so we're bringing the most advanced digital advertising to help serve and reach the multicultural consumer market. So based in LA, a really amazing team, and we're having a good time. In terms of quarantine hobbies, I've got like a little angel on one shoulder and a devil on one shoulder. And what I mean by that is the angel side, I've been like getting back into my workout routine. So I've had a chance to like start my running routine again, get back into my yoga. We are fortunate to have a pool, so I've been able to get some swimming in. Esther, you can come over for your aqua aerobics anytime you want to. So
I love it.
that has been a really saving grace. But then on the devil side, my husband and I have been getting really into craft cocktails. So we've been planning these elaborate happy hours to kind of mark the end of the day. So we'll have a full spread of gourmet cheese and these beautiful old, spicy old fashions and all this stuff. So I would be in a really amazing shape if we weren't having cocktails every day. So a little bit of both to keep me
Good
sane.
trade-off.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that sounds great.
Well, Esther, we have to get you out to the West Coast here to LA, because actually Kim and I thought about having this discussion actually in person. Kim, Pauline, Sheila and I are actually all neighbors. So great to hear from all of you. And, you know, you guys are so successful in your own right, from entrepreneurship to agency leadership to digital leadership. Tell us a little bit about how you are evolving in your career and staying relevant and on top of everything in this ever-changing environment of advertising. And we could start with you, Pauline.
Sure. So really, I think over these, I pride myself in staying relevant in terms of, you know, again, reading voraciously the trades and also networking, and also I'm in a cutting edge industry. So staying on top of, we're kind of like in the midst of streaming wars. There's always some new entrant coming in every week or every day at this time. So the nature of my business is to stay on top of what is trending and what's happening in our space, to be relevant and to be consultative to my clients. I think what's also been really beneficial during quarantine is that you have the space and time to attend webinars, which traditionally I didn't have the time and bandwidth to attend webinars. So Adweek and a number of other organizations like ThinkLA have had amazing webinars, Nielsen on like what's happening within our industry that are normally free of charge. So I have like in between Zoom meetings or I've been attending quite a bit of webinars on the industry as well as like DEI and how to build, you know, teams that are diverse and a company that is diverse overall. So there's just a wealth of great information out there. And really, I think with the quarantine, we've been able, I know for me personally, I've had a lot more time to attend these sorts of events, whereas, you know, before COVID, going in person was always like a challenge. Like if my company wasn't sponsoring and if we weren't personally doing something, it would be hard for me to support or attend something.
Awesome. And Esther, any additional thoughts to that?
Yeah, keeping up is a challenge. Media is fast paced and it's not slowing down, and it seems like it's, you know, getting faster and faster every day. As a matter of fact, I feel like I'm working more, longer hours. I've got more projects and assignments on my plate at one time than I've ever had before. So it is a challenge to keep up. Some of the strategies that I use are I stay close to those that are coming behind me because they're younger, they're digital natives, and they, you know, for them, it's more intuitive, where for me, I've got to learn it. So just staying connected to young talent is both rewarding and it's also informing. The other thing that I mentioned and alluded to in my introduction, I do work for Publicis Group, so it's a very well-resourced organization, and we have a tremendous online learning asset that is available to us. So I have participated in that when I can. To give you a sense, like I have a goal of 1 per quarter, and I haven't quite kept up with that yet, but I'm trying. But the programs that I do sign up for are programs that are outside of my discipline. So I had strategy, I get that, I know all about people, but what's a bigger challenge for me is understanding what's going on in the programmatic and precision space. So the classes I tend to take are classes in those arenas so that I do, you know, I am able to be conversant about some of those things because that's where the growth of our industry is. When it comes to what's happening with racial unrest and COVID and the intersection of all that, I sit on our managing board of our organization. And as I looked around the room, we talk about all of the, you know, things that are happening in society. We really lean into that. And I thought, well, we're not talking about what's happening with Black Lives Matter. We're not talking about these other things. But as I looked around the room, I'm like, nobody else would bring that topic up but me. So I have, you know, been very on the front line with my management team and board to keep that conversation alive and a part of all of the other conversations that we're having. So that's put more work on my plate, but that's okay.
That's what I was going to ask you. It sounds like you're working more now, and but also in a way that's meaningful. So that's awesome. Thanks, Esther. Sheila, same question.
Yeah, so much like Pauline and Esther, making sure that I'm staying abreast of what's going on in the industry is critical. And I do that by getting some of these smart briefs. So I think all of the industry organizations offer these. I'm on the board of the American Advertising Federation, and every morning they send out the smart brief where they've sort of scoured the news and it comes into your inbox. You can just kind of read those quick headlines. So that's one hack that's really important. And then, you know, on another level, a lot of our learning comes from doing. So being a media partner, we're sort of, you know, the boots on the ground, helping clients get their messages out to consumers. And so we're working in conversation with our agency partners every day, talking about how do we do this better. I'm working with our publishers every day, helping them figure out how to optimize their products to deliver more effectively. So through that process, sort of engaging with all of the different people in our ecosystem, and the fact that we are, you know, at the intersection of multicultural marketing and ad tech, we are by definition having to be cutting edge to kind of even know what we're doing. So all of those things keep us on top of it, and really the conversations with all of the smart folks that we're working with on the client side, on the publisher side, keep us relevant. So, you know, the influencer marketing, we know what's hip, we know what's trending. The programmatic advertising, we understand the latest, you know, data technology that needs to be infused. And so it's sort of like, you know, drinking from a fire hose, having all of these elements, but leveraging my team and really empowering them to help also help keep me smart. So Esther, similar to your strategy, like how do I lean on the folks in my organization who are really those functional experts to make sure I know what I need to know so that I can help us move the business forward and help move our clients' businesses forward.
Great. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, ladies, for that. As we all know, our country, unfortunately, has been facing two pandemics, one called COVID and the other is surrounding racial injustice, both of which are directly impacting the Black community. What was your mindset during this George Floyd Black Lives Matter movement, and how did it affect you as a Black female leader? And I'll start with you, Esther.
Yeah, I alluded to this earlier, but the thing that hit me when I said I need to really bring this to the attention of our managing board in a way that we're going to take action on it was actually before George Floyd. So I think you are all familiar with that Facebook email that was going around, "I'm so tired."
Mhm.
My daughter sent that to me. She's a millennial. And I started to read that, and it really struck me how ordinary the activities those people were participating in when they lost their lives. And I said, this makes no sense. And that was the impetus for me to go to my managing board and said, you don't have to think about sitting in a car. You don't have to think about going into a grocery store. You don't have to think about driving down the street and having, you know, a tail light that's not functioning. You just don't have to think about these things that even we wouldn't talk about because they're extraordinarily ordinary, yet those are activities that people were participating in when they lost their lives. So for me, that was the moment of action and really impressing on my board that this is not a community conversation, it's an American conversation, it's a global conversation, and it is a conversation that's gonna make a difference to us. It might not affect you directly, but you have talent in this organization that are experiencing these situations in much more personal ways. You have clients who are looking for opportunities and ways to grow, and cultural audiences are a path to do that. So that was my moment of awakening, if you will, in terms of how I could use the experience we are having in our community to catapult and inspire a different conversation in our organization.
Great. Pauline?
Yeah, you know, pre George Floyd, you know, it's always been a mission for me to build teams that I felt are reflective of what society looks like. So I have always tried to be intentional on how I'm building teams that they ascribe to the values as well, and have the skill sets, but also are diverse and look diverse. But in the wake of George Floyd, I think back to a pivotal moment of Refinery 29 had this article, "Your Black employees are not okay." And it's circulated internally. And, you know, my organization was incredibly supportive. And like Esther, I went to my leadership, and I'm a daughter of Jamaican immigrants. And so we listened to a lot of Bob Marley in our house. And I was struck by Bob Marley's song, "Small Axe." And it's all about racial injustice. And, you know, if you are a big tree, then we are the small axe to sharpen and cut you down. And I thought of the greater collective of the organization, and how can I get leverage the goodwill of allyship and go beyond just my respective team and build a BIPOC task force, which is what I did. That is focused on very strategic initiatives that are business related. I've been involved in like ERGs, which are more social in nature at other companies, but it typically is social and not necessarily filtering into the business. So that moment really inspired me to build something that is really affecting the business at large. So we're working on a number of initiatives, from like external mentorships with BIPOC students at local universities, internal mentorships, and we're starting this to kind of build our pipeline, but also affect change, not just within our organization, but you know, with young people, the next generation, Gen Z, coming up. And so there's a number of things that we're doing, from like a book club and things like that, to again really inform the allies, because I think what's different about this moment, and I think to ensure that it's a movement, is that we do have non-Black people as allies, and allies were there before, but I think that not at the level that we've seen it in the wake of this current social unrest. So really within my respective organization, I kind of leverage that moment to be the small acts and you know, help whatever I can, in little way that I can, to help cut systemic racism.
Great, thank you. Sheila.
So I had the privilege as being a founder, being able to kind of meld and mold the organization in the image that I think is relevant for today's marketplace. And given that we work on helping brands reach multicultural consumers, our team reflects those audiences across the board. So extremely diverse, young talent in our organization. And in dealing with the pandemic, initially, you know, we saw a lot of our Asian colleagues suffering from the xenophobia that gave rise as COVID gave rise. And then our Latinx and Black colleagues facing a disproportionate impact from COVID-related deaths. And then we get hit by, you know, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and the tide of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I've just been so focused on their self-care and being really just verbal about it and being really open about it. And so letting people know that if they need to take time for a mental health break, we incorporated a meditation in our Monday staff meeting. So just finding ways to give them space to say, I'm not okay. And I know that not every organization has that luxury, but I really encourage the folks participating today, if you're a young person of color and you need that moment to reflect and take care of yourself, that you find a way to honor that and know that it is okay. Because if you're in an environment where you are the only one and you don't have the same sort of sentiment, present among your peers, you have to know that it's okay for you to take a moment for yourself. So I think that that's really critically important, and I feel like it's great to hear what Pauline and Esther are doing to really change the tone in their organization so that they create that space, especially for young professionals of color who really need it. And I'll say one other thing that, to Esther's work in terms of being really vocal about things that need to change in the wake of Black Lives Matter movement. At Publicis, they have the Cultural Quotient team that focuses on multicultural insights. And Mirror Digital, we had gone to present to that team and had an amazing meeting. In an audience, we maybe had about 15 people attend that meeting. And after the Black Lives Matter movement really took hold, the level of interest in diverse owned media and reaching multicultural audiences skyrocketed, and we were invited back. And the second time, we had an audience of almost 100 people. So, Esther and Pauline are not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk and really making things happen, which is exciting to see. So, thank you both for your leadership there.
Awesome. You guys talked a little bit about this. We all know that our industry is underrepresented in terms of diversity, particularly Black talent. And in Black women, we know it's even worse. So How are you guys keeping this conversation top of mind, being oftentimes, you know, Esther, you mentioned being the only one in the room. What are some of the things you're doing to keep it top of mind and task others to drive the conversation forward?
I'll build on what Pauline was talking about. Within our organization, I had a small team that I was working with and led. And so we have built a plan that is both business building and brand driving. So that plan extends when we looked back historically at what our D&I initiatives covered, they primarily covered talent, bringing people into the industry, less so on retention. That's a big area of focus for us now. And also culture, like what's the environment like within the organization. But where I sit, I know that what people are paying attention to, what our clients are paying attention to, and what our most senior leadership is paying attention to is what is driving the business. So as I put together a plan, it encompasses people and culture, but what was critical to me was to include product. You know, our ultimate delivery out into the marketplace. If that is not a core pillar in the plan that we put together, then it's still going to be somewhat tangential to what the leadership is paying attention to. So we have built a plan that has a product pillar in it, and it's tough. It's going to be very difficult to change and influence the product that comes out of our organization. But what I think is our young talent is looking at what we're doing, how we're doing it, what we're saying, and how we're walking. And if we're only addressing the culture and talent, and we're not growing people up through the organization so that they can get in leadership roles, if we're not influencing and affecting our product, then the job is not done. And what I said to my leadership is the gap between my role and the next person that could be able to fill it is far too wide. So until I can see a path where we are creating sustainable change within our framework of the organization and the opportunities and equity that we provide within it, I ain't going nowhere.
Nice. Pauline, Sheila, anything to add?
Go ahead, Sheila.
Oh, I was just going to say that, you know, within our organization, I think that because we're a smaller organization, we're able to continue to build that momentum. Where we try and amplify what we're doing is in our work. So when we're talking to our agency partners, we lean into the fact that we're in this unique moment, and you know, and I say things that maybe I wouldn't have said 6 months ago. So I am a real advocate for our diverse media partners and challenging them to think about how these unique voices can help them move their businesses forward, and always rooted in, you know, how are we going to deliver on the ROI and like what is the business objective that we're leaning in towards. But I think a couple of unique things that we've done that marries the moment that we're in with the fact that we want to be focused on diverse markets. We've done some programs where we've given grants to minority businesses, and so bringing those types of ideas to the table where there is a clear marketing objective because we're marketing the brand widely and they're showing up in the community in the right way given our challenging times, but you're also showing up as a resource and as you know, providing assistance in a really difficult moment. So you show that you understand the pain that these communities are going through. So I think bringing that kind of intelligence, those types of case studies, that kind of thinking to our clients helps our clients keep this top of mind and brings it outside of a sort of pro-social conversation and brings it into a business conversation. Like, how can we think about what our new priorities are for our consumer and the new challenges for our consumer and be relevant in this moment? So I think that those are ways to kind of tie those two things together.
Great.
And I think just to, yeah, I mean, I spoke earlier about some of the things that we're doing and some of the things that I'm spearheading in terms of making sure that diversity and inclusion is, equity and inclusion is top of mind in our business efforts. I mean, within streaming, African American and Latinx audiences over index with streaming. So we've been incredibly intentional about making sure from creators, there's representation of stories of Black voices, Latinx voices on the platform. And even from an advertising perspective, being very intentional about sharing best practices and learning from our clients as well. We work with, leaders like P&G and others that are really doing amazing work within DEI. So sharing best practices and learning also from them. So it kind of permeates through all that we're doing throughout the organization. And as I mentioned, that making me feel very empowered to do the work that I'm doing on top of my day-to-day job of sales and advertising sales strategy, doing the BIPOC task force. It all kind of nicely integrates together.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Well, most people have heard the term glass ceiling, and where you can actually look through the ceiling and see what opportunities were possible. But for women of color, specifically Black women, we don't face a glass ceiling. We face what we have heard and we call a concrete ceiling, meaning we face even tougher obstacles, which makes it incredibly difficult to break through because we have to also deal with challenges such as racism and sexism. Tell us a time in your career when you hit an actual concrete ceiling and how did you actually break through it? And we'll start with you, Pauline.
I was unmuting. So I hit a concrete ceiling about 6 years ago when I had my first daughter. And when I returned from maternity leave, my job had changed, my boss had changed. There was a lot of change I walked back into. So, and it was a whole new sort of ecosystem that I had to play in, right? So before I had my daughter, I felt like I was on top of the world. I was leading a very successful team. We had like $50 million in revenue, and coming back, it was like, okay, now your job has changed due to like market conditions. And this is sort of the hand that I was dealt. And no one looked like me. And no one looked like me at the table. And not only did they not look like me, I didn't know anybody. Like I really had to start from scratch. And I was in a very highly matrixed organization. And so what I kind of, I went to like confidants and really started thinking about how do I build sort of this new board of directors for Pauline, and really build, I had to start from scratch in terms of building goodwill with folks internally, and people had known my reputation and know that that I drove results, but again was in a very sort of new, because we were acquired, so it was very different. And what I did is I worked on seeking out people who could be advocates for me in the room and outside the room, with not only my boss, but people that could influence and really kind of, again, speak to the successes that I knew that I was capable of. It's one thing for me to say it, but it's even more impactful when there are others who can say it for you. So really being intentional about meeting folks for coffee, and I know that we're going to talk about what our superpower is. My superpower is the humble brag. I am not afraid to toot my own horn. And I think we as women sometimes struggle with that. And I used to struggle with that, and really became more comfortable in doing the humble brag and speaking to my accomplishments, which was really important to kind of build good faith and will within a new organization. So that is what I did for a year. And I just met with a lot of different people within the organization, and learning how I could um, be effective in this new environment. And what was effective within this new environment is presentation, how you present yourself, how do you speak to the values of the company, the business, speaking in a room. Like, I learned all of the things that I needed to learn to thrive and succeed in this company, because every company has a different set of culture and values and what they hold as valuable. And in the previous organization, it was all about results. If you brought in deals and your team brought in deals, you were doing great. And this organization it wasn't about just bringing in deals. It was the relationship that you had with XYZ. And are you able to really build goodwill with this particular, team? So really understanding like what the culture was and applying that to my own work made all the difference. And I wouldn't have learned that had I not sought out people within the organization that, again, did not look like me, did not know me from a can of paint, but it took time to build that goodwill and faith, and to build a whole new sort of board of directors of people who could advocate for me. So that is, and within a year, I was in a new role that was much better. And I was running a $250 million business. So that was how I broke the concrete ceiling.
Yes, and I actually have to say I had a front seat and I witnessed you do that, so I applaud you for that. Thank you. Esther, I think we have about 5 minutes left too, by the way, time check.
Yeah, I'll just give two very quick examples. One was I was called into the CEO's office. At the time, it was a she, and she wanted to share with me a tremendous opportunity that they were serving up to me. And I was so excited. And as I sat there listening to this opportunity, she talked about the intersection of my needs, the company's needs, and the marketplace. But no one had asked me what my needs were. No one had asked me what I wanted. And so that excitement started to, as she continued to talk, it really started to turn into, but that's not what I want to do. I have done that before. I don't see the growth in that. And so for the first time in my life, I said no to that opportunity. I got up and walked out. It came back 6 months later in a different iteration. But though I said no, I was really afraid of what would happen when I did walk out in any kind of retribution. So that's an example of when I said no and it came back, I was ready with what I wanted to do. And then the second example that I'll bring is our organization was going through a major reorganization. People were being shifted, different brands were being created. And I was being placed again in an area where I did not feel it presented a growth opportunity. There were people that I knew in the organization, but not well, and hadn't worked with in quite a while. So I wrote a one-page letter of reintroduction to those individuals that were moving into new CEO roles, and highlighted the 3 things I wanted them to now know about me. And that got me into my current position. So those are 2 examples of experiences I've had.
Love it. Bold moves. Sheila?
Yeah, I'll be really quick on this one. A couple of things. I underscore everything that Pauline was saying about finding people who can be your advocates, no matter what area of the organization they come from or what they look like. So, and I think this is a really unique time for junior people of color to be able to reach out and ask someone to coffee that you want to build a relationship with who might be more senior, because folks are thinking about these issues, and I think that you're likely to get a yes. So being bold about directing your career, I think, is really important. But for me, my breaking through the glass ceiling moment, or concrete ceiling moment, happened. I was being recruited by 2 different divisions within an organization, and I decided to go work for the division led by a Black woman. And I know not everyone has that luxury, but by choosing that path, as a very sought after junior executive, by choosing to go and build the business that she and I had worked on planning, and the vision that we had, I was catapulted into a leadership role with responsibilities for running a business that I may not have ever had for years, working with another professional. So I also think about finding places where being your race and your gender can be taken off the table and people just really look at your ability, which is hard to find, but certainly well worth it.
Absolutely. Oh, you're on mute, Kristen. Kirsten.
I knew that would happen at some point. We want to just close with one last question, and Andrea, we'll hand it over to you for a quick Q&A. But overall, we'd love to hear from each of you. What is your unique voice in the industry? Specifically, if you had to identify a superpower that you possess, what would it be? And we'll start with you, Pauline. We've heard a little bit about it.
Yeah, I alluded to the humble brag, but in all seriousness, oh, and I am serious about the humble brag. But when I interned over 20 years ago I interned at Kraft Foods, and that was the only experience in my career where I saw people who looked like me in very senior roles. Like the general counsel was Black, Ann Fudge, which is a legend in our industry, was like head of Maxwell House, and Cheryl Atkins Green, who's also like in the industry still to this day. I think she's CEO of Mary Kay, but she was in a marketing leadership role back then, had spoken to all the interns. And she said to us to think of yourself as a brand, and which struck me. I was like, what do you mean? Think of yourself as a product, and really think about what you want people to say about you when you leave the room. And, that is kind of what struck me as the humble brag, like not being afraid to speak to your accomplishments, to position yourself well. And the advice that I give to young Black women or men on the call is don't be afraid of the humble brag. Think of yourself as a brand, and think about what you want people to say about you when you leave the room. Because to that earlier story that I was telling you about, in any organization, be it multicultural, not multicultural, you're going to need those board of advisors who are advocating for you in the room and outside of the room. And if you can't speak to what you've accomplished, who will? So really, I think that the superpower, it may sound, superficial on the surface, but really there's deep meaning to think of yourself as a brand and think about what you want people to say about you after you leave this industry. So I would say like that's been my superpower that has served me well throughout my career, is I'm not afraid of the humble brag, and I'm not afraid to speak to my accomplishments. And you need that when you're in a room of people who don't look like you. You need to be bold and willing to speak about, your value.
Awesome. Great. And Esther, what would you say is your superpower?
I would say listening and diplomacy. For me, being able to really hear what people are saying and what they're not saying, and be able to piece both sides of that story together. And then, my father was a minister, so I watched him over the years steward and counsel people through a variety of situations, both, tremendously happy and tremendously sad. So the ability to use that information that I'm absorbing from another person, and to be able to, in a very calm, diplomatic way, help articulate or clarify that I've seen you, I've heard you, and weave that information into whatever recommendation or whatever we're trying to drive forward has done me very well.
Sheila.
Yeah, I would say my superpower is an ability to connect the dots and take very complex concepts and simplify them. And that helps me with my clients, that helps me with my team. And so that interchange of information, like how do we get down to the core of what really matters and focus on those things, I think helps me block out a lot of the noise and build sustainable relationships. So really simplifying down to the essence of what is really at the heart of what needs to happen.
Awesome. Thank you guys for that. Thank you, Kim and Kirsten, for moderating. And this has been some amazing, amazing information. I love all the stuff that you guys have just offered up to everybody. What an amazing amazing just talking. I love how you talk about your professional growth as well as the self-care. So that is so important because not everybody thinks about that part. So thank you for that. We have a few minutes left and we want to jump in and get some of those questions from a few people. So if I can throw a couple out at you guys, and Kim and Kirsten, please feel free to answer as well. We have one of someone who said, we're all super busy with our jobs that we get paid to do, and then those with kids doing virtual learning. So I'm so tired and easily defeated by any pushback from my company with regards to DEI. And I know the work has to be done. And unfortunately, people of color have to do it so we get what our communities need. But I'm struggling to find the energy to keep up. Where do you find the energy to continue the fight within the movement? Kirsten, how about we start with you today with that one?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I have 2 kids, so I can relate. I work in an organization that is challenged to figure out D&I solutions. I think you just have to be real with yourself. I think you need to understand what time you have available and what you can offer. And sometimes the littlest things can go a long way. So if it's just calling someone and building a relationship with someone who might need some advice, that could be your contribution. Or it's, supporting someone who is part of a larger movement, tack on to something that's already happening so that the onus isn't just on you. So I think I wouldn't be so discouraged with the lack of your, capability or timing, if you will, due to your busy schedule. I would just sort of identify what your bandwidth will allow, and be happy with that, because anything is better than nothing at this point.
Right. Exactly. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Another question. Have you ever found yourself having to ask, and I think I know this one, over and over again about inequalities, inequities, and concerns in the workplace or just in general? It said it's kind of like women of color don't get a serious response to our concerns, and how can we be taken more seriously as women of color without getting upset? Kind of similar, the same lines, I think. Yeah. Anyone can jump in if you'd like to do that. Anyone who'd like to do that.
I think for me, I had to learn how to maneuver the conversation and ask the question. I would be asking questions. There'd be a lot of conversation. I would leave the meeting and realize I didn't have my question answered. So I had to learn what are the 1 to 3 questions that I want answered, and not leave the room until those questions are answered. And that, developing the ability to do that in a way that didn't make, whomever I was speaking to defensive or angry, was something that took me quite a while to learn. But that is something that helped me.
I want to just add one thing on that, one point on that, just one tactic. Just exactly what Esther's saying. You got to get to a point where you can get to real talk with people. And so how do you create that space where people feel like they can really tell you how they're feeling? And sometimes that can be over coffee, just sometimes just getting out of the office and going down the street to a cafe to create a new, just kind of a new environment will give people that sense to open up. Or sometimes it might be over cocktails, but it's just like, it's just meeting them at a level that feels a little bit more social so that you can make them not bring down their defenses, but really feel like they can open up and talk to you not only as a colleague, but as an individual and as a person.
Mm-hmm. And even just to add to that, because I know that many of us are not back in the office and won't be for quite some time. So just to add to that, walk and talk instead of being on Zoom, like, hey, can we just walk and talk, like literally a 20-minute conversation to have more of an informal discussion to Sheila's point, to kind of help bring down those barriers.
That's great. Thank you. That's some really good information, guys. Thank you for that. The next question is for a young Black woman who doesn't have anyone to advocate for them. What is your advice on how to push the career forward? How do you do that?
So,
Kim? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pauline.
No, go ahead, Pauline. No, she's got it.
No, I again, going back to that earlier example of having people who did not look like me within the organization, is again, really observing and understanding what the politics are and figuring out who are the most approachable people within the organization that can help that can help you, and asking them out to coffee. I can't stress that enough, because people don't do that. You just kind of sit in your own little world and say, oh, the people are not, I'm not saying that this person is doing this, but if you're not talking to people and really understanding how you can connect, and sometimes, and also don't be afraid to leave either, because I've left organizations where I've said, this is not a cultural fit, this doesn't work for me. And be bold enough also to leave. There's certain organizations where it's just never going to be a fit for you. And that's okay. You know, throughout my career, I have left organizations that didn't really support me or help me to prosper, to go, and then I found organizations that did allow me to prosper. So I would say, it's values, and take that time and space to interview them to make sure that it's the right fit for you.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Appreciate
Andrea,
that.
I would also add that if you don't find anyone in your organization that supports you, look outside your organization, right? There's so many people, including those on this panel, those in the industry, who have a lot of the same stories. You've heard a lot of the same challenges echoed on this panel in their careers. Similar, I'm taking notes because I'm getting advice from these ladies and have had a lot of similar experiences. So don't be afraid to look outside of the organization and try to find a mentor, an ally who can sort of help you become more visible.
Thank you for that. So we're going to take one last question. We have a few others, but we have time for one more. As we work to get more women like you all into our conference rooms, what is the one thing that your coworkers can do to make you more supported when you are the only one in the room? That's a good question.
That's a good question.
And anyone can jump in for this one, because I think all of you can have answers, but anybody just jump in.
I do feel, you know, it's about how are we being included, you know, and how is your voice valued? And to really, you know, if you're having the seat at the table, you want to matter and you want to make a difference. So I think at the end of the day, it's about looking for people that can help support you and allow you to be you, you know, in your own world, but yet it's how you're showing up, how you're speaking up, and how you're stepping up, and in the allowing you to have that space to do that, and with that support and that person to really value what you bring is really what's going to be key for you.
To build on that, it's often the least expected person that can end up being your advocate, whether that person is, you know, really harsh and comes across super aggressive, or it's someone that's really quiet, or someone who has the polar opposite experience of yours. Those people, if you get them one-on-one, can become your biggest advocate.
Wonderful. Great advice. Thank you all for that. This has been an amazing, amazing discussion and talk. We have more people who are trying to get in and ask questions, but we got to finish it up. And we just know that you guys have just imparted such great wisdom. It's been such an honor to hear from all of you wonderful ladies today, and to have you share with us how you've been navigating and just advertising the industry with all your unapologetic grace and passion, and for dropping great knowledge with us. And of course, giving us a real peek at your superpowers and how you use them for good. We love that. So that's wonderful. Thank you. I'm hoping that not only women, but especially women of color and their endeavors in their career and life really got a lot out of this. So thank you again for being here with us today. And we hope for our audience that you really enjoyed the event. And we're going to be sending out a survey for your thoughts, and we really rely on your feedback. So please respond to that survey that we send out. We're also going to send a recap with links to any resources and organizations that were mentioned as well today. So those will all be coming out to you as well. Just a reminder to our audience to learn more about ThinkLA's mission to serve the community and to register for some of our other really great upcoming events and webinars. Check out our website at thinkla.org, and also our diversity, inclusion, and gender page. Some great resources there. If you're not yet a professional or corporate member of ThinkLA, you can do it anytime. Go online and sign up and take advantage of some really great member benefits and discounts. Again, thank you so much to Esther and Kim, Kirsten, Pauline, and Sheila, and our ThinkLA staff for all your work in making this event happen today and being here today. It's just been wonderful. Thank you to everyone in our audience. Thank you, ladies. I appreciate all of you. We at ThinkLA appreciate your continued support. Everyone, take care and be safe. Bye-bye.